Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Basics of Facilitating and Leading a Meeting. My name is Carolyn Bennett-Glauda, and I am the Education and Outreach Librarian for Southeastern New York Library Resources Council. My pronouns are she and hers, and we are so glad that you're here today. I have just enabled the closed captioning, so it should be coming up automatically on your screen. You can use Zoom settings to adjust the size or disable it if you would like. And as a reminder, the technology is imperfect. So at any time you can speak slowly and clearly, the closed captioning will work just a little bit better. All attendees are expected to follow Southeastern's Code of Conduct, which will be added to the chat shortly. In short, basically just treat all staff, event attendees, and speakers with respect. Those who are not adhering to the Code of Conduct will be removed from the webinar. This presentation is being recorded, and we will share a link to the recording in the next few days. So keep an eye on the chat. About 3/4 of the way through, we will drop a link to the CE certificate request form. You must be present at the webinar to request a CE certificate. We would like to begin this webinar by acknowledging that we all work and live on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. As you know, Indigenous Peoples Day was this past Monday, and we're going to put some links in the chat so you can take a moment to explore the map, identify the land that you're on, the languages that are spoken, and the treaties that affect your area. If you want to learn more about the local Native community, I'm really excited about an event that we're having on October 28th. It's called Teaching About the Stockbridge Munsee Community with speaker Heather Brugel. There's a link for that in the chat as well if you'd like to join us for that event. So in a little bit, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Peyton, Clarissa, and Lara, and I just have a few opening remarks before we get going. First and foremost, I would like to invite you all to introduce yourselves. Since we are a sizable group today, let's use the chat to let us know who you are. That'll come up automatically, where you're from, and just for fun, could you write down one word that comes to your mind when you think of meetings? So as you're doing that, as you're thinking about your one word, I'd like to go over our agenda for the day. I'm also going to call attention to the fact that when you're running a meeting about meetings, every part of the meeting is a teachable moment. So take note that in this introduction, I will do some things intentionally. First up, I'm having you all introduce yourselves in the chat so that you're participating from the get-go. If we were in a physical space together, I would have you all speak so that you could hear the sound of your voice in the room. Breaking that silence at the start is one of the key elements of creating a comfortable space for attendees to speak later when it comes time to participate. In Zoom world, we're mimicking that by asking you to use the chat. So at this point, I'm just starting to see some of them coming through, so that's great. I just want to give you a little bit more time to get comfortable using that because we're going to be using the chat for the duration of this meeting. And it looks like our attendees are similar to who we had on the registration list. We have a lot of people from here in the Hudson Valley and guests from Brooklyn and Rochester and all over New York. So I'm gonna look forward to looking through those after I finish this introduction. If we were a group of like 12 people or fewer, then I would have us go around the Zoom meeting and like unmute ourselves for these introductions. But I find 12 people is about the limit to not eat up all of your meeting time. So this is an overview of our agenda for today. We already did the welcome, the housekeeping, the land acknowledgement, and introductions. And now we are on to my overview of the agenda and the introductory piece about facilitators. We're going to try our best to stick to this schedule so that all the presenters have time for their material and that we can address any questions as they come up. So at this point, I am going to let the facilitators introduce themselves. Peyton, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Peyton Powell. I'm one of your facilitators today. I'll be discussing how to structure a meeting to create a space where participants feel comfortable to participate. I formerly used to work at Finkelstein Memorial Library in Spring Island, New York as a librarian assistant. But by day, I'm currently a public school teacher by trade. Nice to meet you all.
All right, so Clarissa.
Hi, I'm Clarisa Rosario-DeGroate. I have been working in libraries for 15 years. Currently, I work at Mount St. Mary College in the Kaplan Family Library, where I perform circulation duties as well as supervise our student workers. Also, I am a part-time circulation clerk in the Goshen Public Library and Historical Society. While I was completing my bachelor's degree at the Mount, I focused on education and was able to student teach as well as substitute teach for local elementary schools. And some of my additional activities include advising on the continuing education committee for Southeastern and co-hosting a monthly Pokemon club for the West Point family homes. Glad to be here.
And Lara?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lara Sibley. I am a public and research services librarian at Marist College in Poughkeepsie. And I'm going to be talking a little bit today about topic ideas for meetings, particularly for discussion groups. And most of my time as a librarian, I've been doing library instruction and reference work. But I got my start in the public library and circulation. So one of my favorite places. So we're going to try to touch on all different topics for all different types of libraries and types of library meetings.
Great. Thank you. I'm super excited to hear from all of you in a little bit. So we have a great group today. All right. Next up, I wanted to go over our goals for today. Before we wrap at 4 p.m., we aim to help you, 1, understand the role of the meeting facilitator, 2, use techniques for encouraging balanced participation among attendees, 3, facilitate through conflict or difficult discussions, and 4, start and end meetings fluidly. I want to make one note. I always read my slides in full. This serves a couple different purposes. One is that it makes the presentation more accessible to people with eyesight issues. Secondly, knowing that I have to read everything on the screen helps me ensure to keep my slides simple. And thirdly, I think information is reinforced when you both see and hear it. So the stated goals, this is what we're asking for facilitators at Southeastern. We run 8 special interest groups here, and Peyton, Laura, and Clarissa have each had a turn running different ones. And we do some of the work together ahead of time to create an agenda and an outline and create questions that will prompt discussion. So once we've done that prep work together and the meeting day arrives, we never know how chatty the group is going to be. So I'd help facilitators be prepared for meetings with attendees that need a little more coaxing than others, so we don't get that awkward silence. And so that if we do get the awkward silence, it doesn't feel like it's the end of the world. And that's especially true in Zoom, where the technology makes it hard to know if someone is really gearing up to participate or if they're just being quiet. So before I finish, I just want to go over 4 of my favorite community agreements. Community agreements are guiding principles for us to follow while we share this space. The gist of the Chatham House rule is that you share information you receive, but do not reveal the identity of who said it. So that's a reason that we don't record our special interest groups, and note takers are a vital part of the meeting because they record the ideas that we generate with the freedom to let participants work out their own problems. Listen to understand means that we encourage people to talk one at a time, respond to the person who just spoke, and amplify the idea of others or give them attribution. And make commitments is where we try to leave these meetings with tangible ideas for progress. While it's okay to air grievances in these less formal meetings, if attendees can leave by setting intentions and making plans for follow-up, there's more chance that we'll create positive change. And finally, land the plane is a way of saying that you should be cognizant when you've been speaking for too long. And I'm actually like 5 minutes over, so we'll adjust the agenda accordingly. You'll each still get 20 minutes. But it's better to conclude your thoughts than to keep going in circles. And I am going to do that now. And here's a fun little image of our meeting about meetings and our funhouse mirror meeting. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Peyton.
Thanks, Carolyn. You can go to just stay right there. Okay, I'll tell you when to hit the space bar. Okay, so little backstory. My first SIG with Southeastern Library Council was about a year ago this month. I had several special interest groups. I had attended several special interest groups on equity, diversity, and inclusion that were being run by a colleague and a friend of mine. After the last SIG she facilitated, I called her to congratulate her on a job well done. Her reply was, "Great. I recommended you to facilitate the next 3. Carolyn will be in contact with you soon." You know that part in a movie where there was once easygoing playing music in the background and then loudly the record skips, followed by a feeling of fear? Well, my feeling was sheer terror. You can hit the space bar, Carolyn. Anyone in the audience familiar with what I mean? One thing you may not know about me is how incredibly shy I am and how I suffer from social anxiety. Whether facilitating or being a participant, speaking in front of large groups gives me a feeling of, you guessed it, sheer terror. What I have learned through facilitating is to push through the fear, to realize that most people feel just as I do, but I can be an example of what it looks like to be on the other side. My first step was to understand my role as a facilitator. You can go to the next slide. Your first step to understanding the role of a facilitator is to understand the role of a.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Let me shut it back.
Please.
All right, sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm still at school. So understanding the role of a facilitator. The first thing you have to understand is it's your job to just moderate the conversation. You can hit the space bar. Your job is also to set the tone. You can hit the space bar again. So setting the tone sets the mood and establishes a quality or a feeling behind the conversation that you're trying to convey. So for example, we were having a conversation about equity in the workplace. So I used a YouTube clip from The Office, something that was meant to be humorous, but behind it was something more serious. So we set the tone to establish a certain feeling, a little bit of lightheartedness to go along with something that was a little more serious. You can hit the space bar again. Keeps the agenda on track. Is another role of a facilitator. Ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate and creates an inclusive and safe environment. That's the next one. And I just put a little meme. You want to attend a meeting about meetings? So that's what we're learning about today. And I read in the comments that some of the feelings behind meetings were feeling tense or feeling dread. That's exactly how I feel whenever I have to either attend or facilitate. So let's talk about how to warm up your space so that people feel comfortable with participating. So the warm up, you can hit the space bar, Carolyn. So you want to give the opportunity for participants to introduce themselves, right? So this allows participants to have ownership over their space and their time in the meeting. And it also presents networking opportunities. So I can see here that there's some people in my area that are actually on this SIG. So, hey guys, Rockland County, shout out. Allowing people to also speak or let themselves be known can also help some people overcome that talking at the table jitters. So if I've already kind of had the opportunity to say something, it takes away the jitters of then having to say something later because I've already said something to begin with. And I think you can hit the space bar one more time. Posting an agenda. So posting an agenda just allows participants to know what's coming next. And it allows participants an idea of what to expect. And it just makes them more inclined to find a place in the meeting where they would like to participate. Also, if we just stay on the slide for a second, as far as having an opportunity to introduce yourself, no, I think that's going to come later. All right, you can go to the next one. Okay, so also included in the warm-up is defining community agreements. So these are all things that you've had examples of already because Carolyn has already set it up for us. So we all got an opportunity to introduce ourselves. She went over the community agreements. And here's just some examples of ones that she has given me from a SIG that we planned together that we actually used in one of our SIGs. So some examples are using I statements, making sure that things are only about myself. I don't want to speak for other people. Make sure you're listening to understand. A lot of the things we say in the beginning are, we're going to make sure this is a place of grace. So we want to respect other people's opinions and allow people to share without the fear of me then taking it back and gossiping about it with someone else. We want to ensure that this is a safe space. And by setting these community agreements in the beginning, you can allow people to feel comfortable knowing that to be true. Another thing you may want to do to set up just some community agreements or just flow of conversation is allowing people to understand the structure and the flow of the conversation. So for example, maybe I can put it in the chat. We can say, okay, so if we're in the meeting today, this is how we are going to participate. If you would like to speak, you write your name in the chat, and then you, after it, you write stack. I'll give you an example. So stack means that I would like to speak out and say something. If I'm talking and you're like, hey, I have a great idea or a great resource to share, I would say resource, and then I might put a link after it. If I want to just make a comment, I can just put comment, meaning that no one really has to respond to it if they don't want to, or maybe they do. I just want something to say about what you're saying at the moment. I put comment. So these are some of the rules that you can establish in the beginning, just so that people know how to flow in the conversation. And for those of us that are a little more shy or more reserved, gives us the opportunity to prepare for making a comment, and gives us a way to organize how we want to participate in the meeting. It also makes it easier if someone is collecting notes in the meeting. It allows them a way to have their notes organized. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, so included in the warm-up is starting the conversation. So after you've gone through all the housekeeping, you want to remind everyone why we are here today, so they can redirect their focus to the intention of the conversation. You can go to the next one. So in doing this, you also want to set the stage. So what you can't do is assume that everybody knows what you're talking about. So you want to build some type of prior knowledge. So some participants will come to the meeting with expert prior knowledge, and some may come with none, and both are fine. But you want to make sure that you are setting the stage for all levels of understanding to participate in the conversation. So how can we do that? Well, you may want to include some type of video about the topic that you're on, some type of quote. Maybe you want to come with a requirement to read a document already, show an article, share a meme, or tell a story, like I did about my first time knowing that I had to give a SIG. All those things can set the stage for a conversation so that everyone that's participating, even though we're all coming from different levels, different backgrounds, we all have something in common that we can now talk about. You can go to the next one. So in doing that, you're also helping to build a relationship with and within your audience. So we also can't assume that everyone processes information the same way, right? So all people learn differently, and that's fine. That's what makes humans so beautiful. And you should do your best to accommodate all those different types of learning styles. So just going back to the previous slide, if you want to include something visual, some people are visual learners. In order to understand what you're talking about, they need to see it. Some people are auditory learners. So that means if they are going to understand, they need to hear something about it. And some people are kinesthetic learners, which means that they need something more hands-on to actually understand what's happening. So what do we do now while we're on the stage as the facilitator? What you want to do is write yourself a script. So writing yourself a script helps you keep the pacing. What you don't want to do is improv, because what happens as soon as Carolyn goes, okay, we're going to pass it on to Peyton, all of a sudden now I've forgotten everything I want to say. So having a script will help you stay on task and will help you keep the pacing. Choose a meeting style and separate it into blocks of time. So the meeting style that I used to use in the SIGs that I have given is, you know, we talk about the topic a little bit. I give a video. I used to show YouTube videos, something about in reference to what we're learning that day. Sometimes I would give a quote, and then I give people time in breakout rooms to discuss it. Once we're done with the breakout rooms, there's one person in each group that's responsible to record the thoughts, comments, anything that they feel like their group wants to share. And then we allow the groups to share out. We validate what they're saying while we're talking about it. So there's the conversation and communication piece. So that way it's also allows certain people that maybe don't want to share in a large group to be able to share in a smaller group. And then the people that are more comfortable with sharing with the larger group are the ones that usually speak out. see, stay on task. So also while you're on stage, you want to be able to, while you're having these discussions, you may have to redirect some of the shared comments. So sometimes, we get passionate about what we're talking about and we may be, off tangent sometimes. So once it starts to get into, well, I remember, my cat the other day, blah, 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 you may just want to help some of those people redirect so that they can land the plane and not take up space to make sure that everyone is included in the conversation. You can go to the next one. So this is the most important thing, especially when you are talking about vulnerable topics. So while you're on a stage and having these conversations, as the facilitator, you want to make sure you validate people's feelings. So sometimes if you're having conversations about, let's say, equity, diversity, or inclusion, there can be things that have happened in the workplace that are hurtful. And you want to be able to validate those feelings, especially when people are showing their vulnerability and sharing out in groups, which may not be easy for some. So you want to make sure you validate these feelings of the participants and make sure everybody feels heard. So validating helps communicating acceptance. When you validate someone's emotions, you are showing that you care about them and accept them for who they are. Validating also strengthens relationships. It shows people how to accept other people, and it shows how to feel more connected and build stronger relationships. It also shows that you value people and their time and their feelings. So when you validate someone's emotions, you are showing them that they are important to you. And it helps with emotional regulation so that you can help people validate or regulate their emotions, especially when they're sharing strong feelings. So examples of how to validate. I can see how you would feel that way. That must be really hard. I hear you. I understand. Thank you for being so brave. Thank you for sharing. That's very hurtful, and I'm sorry to hear that. I'm here for you. So when people share out, you don't want to just move on to the next person. You want to make sure that they hear you hearing them. And then I put a little meme on the side that says, people start to heal the minute they feel heard. So the validation piece is really important, especially when you're having conversations about vulnerable topics.
What is going on?
You can go to the next slide. So while you're on stage, the wrap up is also very important. You want to spend about the last 5 to 10 minutes of the meeting reviewing shared ideas and ensure that participants have a general tone to take home so that everyone leaves understanding the purpose of the meeting. Remember, people will not always remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Leave people feeling heard and leave people feeling safe. You can go to the next slide. So what's the take home today? Leading meetings can feel overwhelming. It can leave you with feelings of tenseness or dread or terror, like it does for me. But understanding that you don't have to be an expert on a topic to facilitate a discussion is important to know, right? Because my feeling was, well, I'm not an expert on these things. Why would somebody listen to me, right? You don't have to be an expert to facilitate a discussion. All you're doing is creating a safe space, an inclusive space to have a conversation. Organize yourself so that you can maintain the flow of a conversation, which will help you overcome a lot of anxiety behind facilitating. And be confident in yourself and validate the feelings of others. You can go to the next slide. One of the most important rules is be yourself. Whether you are super shy, apologetically outgoing, or somewhere in between, lead the meeting with confidence and compassion for others. Thank you.
Thanks, Peyton. We still have a few minutes for Q&A, and that was great. Also, thank you for bearing with me with the next slide. I was also really nervous after giving my introduction. So I was like fumbling with how to move the slide deck. So I was like, yeah, I feel what you're talking about right now. I'm feeling it at this moment.
And sorry about the interruptions. It kind of like threw me off.
Oh, that's
I kind
that
of locked
was,
the door in this room and they don't know that I'm in here.
but that was some next level stuff, you know, like that's like meeting facilitation 2.0, like facilitating a meeting while somebody is coming into your office. So
Thanks, guys.
I'm just scanning the chat to see if there's any. Oh, you do have a question.
That's a good question. How to validate someone if they're saying something you or others don't agree with? I would say that's interesting. Let's unpack that. I would say something like that. That's a different view. Well, can't say that. That's interesting. That's an interesting view that you would have. What you don't want to do is not validate someone. Well, I don't know who believes that. What you don't want to do is that, because you want to make sure that it's a open space for everyone to have an opinion, right? And the reason that we facilitate or have these discussions is so that we can share out what our beliefs are and be open to new ones, right? So you don't want to shut someone down because they don't agree with you. You want to also give them space because they deserve to be heard as well. So I would say something like that's interesting. Can you explain more? Yeah, can you tell me more? Someone else said that. Any other questions you guys may have? And if you think of something else, you can still throw in the chat. I think we'll have time at the end for questions also.
All right, not seeing any more questions. And sorry if for whatever reason, when I'm sharing the screen, like pulling up the bottom of Zoom where I can mute and unmute myself, like it isn't working fluidly. So if I'm like, I think I'm making like a struggling face. Oh, you have actually one more
That's
question.
okay, that's technology. How do you deal with people who are disrupting the meeting, not following the rules? I would just remind them of the rules. I would say, before we continue, I just want to remind everyone of the rules. So you also don't want to single any one person out. You just want to make it an overview of the rules for everyone again. Let's just review the rules. Again, we just want to make sure there's one mic, which means that only one person speaks at a time. We also want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to have a say. So we want to share the space. So if you've already spoken, let's give someone else space to speak also. So is there anyone that hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak now? And if it continues, then, you know, maybe then you have to say, well, if everyone has the right to be here or not, but if you're not following the rules, like if you're staying here, you're agreeing to follow these rules. And if you're not following the rules, then we may have to ask you to leave. Again, not singling any one person out, but just making a blanket statement. And then hopefully they catch the drift. Any other questions? And if they don't catch the drift, just kick them out of the Zoom. Maybe I'd send them a private message on the side, because what you don't want to do is invalidate someone in front of a group. So maybe I private message them on the side, yeah, and say something like that. And then maybe after that, then maybe you'd have to remove them from the Zoom, because what you don't want to do is create a space that's unsafe for everyone else, just to make the space for the one person, you know? So I would probably privately message them, remind them of the rules, remind them that they're not following them. And then after that, maybe they have to be removed. But I wouldn't do it out in public in front of everyone. Yeah. These are good questions. I like these questions.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing that privately. That's
Yeah.
that's a way that the other people might not even notice what's going on, but might suddenly feel
Yeah, it just
the
makes
relief.
everyone feel weird, you know, and being a teacher, I deal with that all the time. Um, it also makes the person doing it sometimes do it more if you single them out in front of everyone, because now they feel like maybe they have something to prove, or they
Yeah.
don't want to feel embarrassed and they're trying to, like, you know,
The defense mechanisms kick in.
the defense mechanisms come in. So you never want to do that in front of everyone. Everyone may notice it, you know, but you don't want to call them out in front of everyone's, like, specifically individually.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been fortunate in this region, haven't encountered that like in the wild in the meetings that we've been leading so far, but
Yeah.
it's a good group we have in these parts. So
Yeah. I've had good experiences so far.
yeah. I know we talk about it a lot so that we're prepared, but I also want to let people know that this is not a common occurrence. It's a good thing to be prepared for, but the most 99% of the experience is going to be positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is also in the Zoom world, you know, in person, it's a little more difficult. I probably would pull that person aside after the meeting. You know, also not addressing it in front of everyone. Maybe everyone notices, but it doesn't mean everyone has to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Peyton. If you all are thinking of more questions, I'm going to turn over to Clarissa. You can stack your questions in the chat, and we do have dedicated Q&A time at the end, so we're all going to still be here at that point.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. All right, Clarissa, I'm turning it over to you.
Alrighty, so if you could change the slide. Hi, everyone. I'm Clarisa Rosario-DeGroate. I've introduced myself a little earlier, so I'm just going to start ahead with the presentation, which I entitled De-Stress, Then Impress, because it's all about addressing that anxiety aspect of facilitating a meeting that, as we already established, can be so common, and it will help us to hopefully be able to decide maybe we'd want to facilitate meetings and give it a try. All right, so we can go to the next slide. All right, and so therefore, the main takeaways of this meeting will be good preparation, making a personal mantra, putting things into perspective, and why anxiety shouldn't stop us from putting our best foot forward. So I feel that many people shy away from facilitating or leading due to the stress and anxiety it could cause and not knowing where to start. Therefore, you know, we need to create a way to address these feelings that we get before we perform these meetings. So I'd like for us to draw our attention inward during this section. There is a good chance that the reason we are in this profession is because we either have a love of education and disseminating information, sitting alone in a corner reading books that whisk our minds away to fantastical places, or the willingness to help others and the intelligence to accompany that wish. These are all desires that we hold. We even have a direct or indirect desire to be attending this meeting right now. Perhaps you've always wanted to try facilitating a meeting, but it seemed daunting in some way and you'd like clarification. Therefore, I will be focusing the next section on ways to help you work through these feelings of anxiety about being a meeting facilitator, as well as giving you all the details on the prep work involved, so you know what to expect and when. You should feel prepared to prepare, be able to make your own mantra, see things from the perspective of someone who's already facilitated, and learn why the good stress is important. And let's go to the next slide. So my first tip is to stay authentic, be authentically you. To be a meeting facilitator, you don't have to turn into someone else. This is not a time to compare yourself to others, nor do you have to be perfect. In fact, it's our imperfections and flaws that can end up bringing a human element to these meetings. Doesn't a human element sound like the whole essence of library work? We are real people that serve real people. And so we show up as we are, and we know that everything gets easier after the first time. My personal motto for meeting facilitation is, if you only showed that you care about libraries, then it was a good day. These meetings have been essential for me as a support staff member to learn from others, grow into the profession, gain a sense of camaraderie, and be able to take back invaluable insight to both the public and academic libraries for which I work. Speaking of camaraderie, meetings are a great way to network and find other like-minded individuals who have the same goals. And I actually saw that reminded some people in the beginning when they spoke about words that reminding of meetings. Some people put collaboration and meeting new people. We are all here to improve the quality of what we do in our libraries. And once you attend a few meetings and feel comfortable, I highly suggest that you give facilitation a try. But before you do, I have some more tips to share in the next slide. Now, I'd like to take a moment and prove that we're all in this together by naming some of the physical, mental, or emotional symptoms we feel when we're venturing into new territory and feeling anxiety about it. So, what are some anxiety symptoms you feel when you think about conducting meetings or when you're trying something new? Please write them in the chat and just take a minute so that we can see that we're all in this together. And while you type, I'd like to explore this quote by FUBU clothing line CEO and award-winning Shark Tank investor Damon John. If you aren't living your dreams, then you are living your fears. I find that message to be extremely relevant because if we lived in a world that didn't challenge us to get out of our comfort zone, we would not make much progress. Facilitating a meeting is a great way to gain confidence while taking a first smaller step into unknown territory. So I see that people have shared that they get things like sweating, nervous, imposter syndrome, jitters, tense shoulders. Sometimes I get a stomach ache. Just that face. Brain fog, that's interesting too. Jittery, pulse racing. Yeah, these are a lot of things that I personally have also experienced, especially before my first time facilitating meetings. Thank you so much to all of those who contributed your thoughts. When you feel these symptoms, it's your body telling you that there's potentially some danger and the primal sense of protection has been activated. Thankfully, we do have that power to set some of these reactions at bay. As New York Times bestselling author Dr. Judd Brewer explains, we can think of anxiety in 3 phases: the trigger, the behavior we choose to take in response to that trigger, and the reward we receive from taking that behavior. As you can see in my example, the trigger is something unknown that feels like it's threatening to you, such as choosing to facilitate a meeting, but not knowing what to expect from the meeting. You might feel worried and concerned about how much support you'll get or how much you'll have to do on your own, and nervous about being good enough. Next column is behavior. The behavior you can now take is to gather information. That includes watching what other facilitators do when you attend meetings, such as the Library Council's special interest groups, attending this webinar about meeting facilitation, and completing some preparation for the meeting, which we'll discuss further in a few moments. Finally, in the third column is the reward. The reward for you is the anxiety dissipates as long as you have a greater understanding of what's involved and knowing that there are supports for you that you can reach out to along the way. Also, there's the feeling that after the first facilitation, the subsequent ones get a lot easier to perform, which increases your confidence and may even result in you wanting to try some more new things. So let's look at the next slide so we can see what we can do to help alleviate these feelings of anxiety. So full disclosure, I'm not a health expert. So I had one of my colleagues, Maria Soltis, help me out with this section. She's a certified holistic health and wellness coach and was kind enough to allow me to share with you how to make a mantra. A mantra is a short, directed statement that can bring focus and calm to you when you say it repeatedly. It's an easy to remember phrase and it gets you in the zone. Some also say that mantras are meditative, so your words reach your subconscious and you can manifest things into your life. To create a calming mantra, do the following. Make a short, easy to remember phrase. Have the end goal in mind. You want to think of where you want to be and what you want to accomplish. Make the mantra present tense and say it as if you are already achieving that positive thing. Start the mantra with phrases such as I am, I choose, I feel. Based on that criteria, an example of one could be I am calm, I am confident, I am successful. If you don't mind, please feel free to share your fearless facilitation mantras in the chat now as you create them. Repeating these words helps silence any negative self-talk your mind might be producing. That way you'll have tunnel vision on the positive and you will be ready to take advantage of opportunities. So while you're typing in any mantras you think of that could help with meeting facilitation, I'm just going to go a little off script and just say that I was saying a mantra before our meeting started. I am prepared. I am awesome. I can do this. I can do this. So someone just wrote in the chat, is I can do this a good one? And that's exactly what I said before this meeting, which is so funny, of course. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa. Okay, so in the next slide, I'd like to show you about a timeline of events of a meeting. And before I do, I just want to read off some more of these facilitation mantras that are coming in the chat. I know what I'm talking about. Oh, I really love that one. They say, Stephanie says it's good for imposter syndrome too, which is so true. I got this. Oh, and it's so cool when you can actually have a partner in facilitation and you pump each other up with a mantra. Like, that is pretty awesome to me. Thank you so much for sharing that you do that, because you know, everyone is stronger in numbers. Okay, next slide, please, Carolyn. So here for you, I have a timeline of to reduce the anxiety of the unknown. So this is from the first meeting I facilitated and what happened and when. 2 months before the meeting, Carolyn from Southeastern, an additional co-facilitator, and I brainstormed the topic. The topic was not necessary, but I thought it would be cool if I could think of something relevant that would be happening with a wide range of library professionals. We settled on conflict resolution. 1 week later, Carolyn wrote a meeting description and ran it by us to get our thoughts. We approved it, and a meeting was advertised on the Southeastern website. 1 week before the meeting, something came up and I found out I'd be the only one facilitating. Yikes! Although I would be leading the meeting, I decided to go with the flow because there's really no other choice at that point, and I knew I still wanted to commit myself to the cause. A few days before the meeting, Carolyn sent me the attendance list, a copy of the agenda, and a visual for the framework of how we would present the topic. Notice I said we because when you're facilitating for the first time, you're never left stranded and always continue to have support. Finally, on meeting day, Carolyn assisted me with introductions and an icebreaker for that in-person meeting. As facilitator, I kept the conversation moving along when people were done with their thoughts and ideas, and made sure things were running on time and everyone felt heard. So little by little, I took the reins. For example, in my second meeting, I came up with my own icebreaker from an improv session I attended at the Goshen Public Library run by Melissa Tidd. By the third meeting, I was very confident, and then the pandemic hit. So you can imagine what it was like for my third and last facilitation to be the first meeting of the global pandemic. All of a sudden, my desires shifted from wanting to do something that would increase my status as a library professional to realizing I was in a position to give real support and resources to library staff who might have just faced one of the worst things they've ever gone through. It made me appreciate taking the leap in the first place to facilitate meetings because it ended up meaning so much more than I ever thought it would. Next slide, please. Okay. And on the next slide, now that I've shared these tips and experiences with you, I hope you enjoy the following preparation bingo game for facilitating meetings. It is my hope that doing any horizontal, vertical, or diagonal 3 in a row will help prepare you for leading a meeting of any type. I'd have you start in the middle square, that purple one that's highlighted, which states borrow and peruse 1 to 2 library books about your topic if you have one, and gather a few speaking points to avoid any awkward silence moments that are bound to happen when conversation wanes. The next one is make a 1-sentence mantra to repeat a few times before the meeting or during a meeting break if there is one. It could give you a quick calming or confidence boost. The next one would be to be ready to collect notes from your peers and fellow library coworkers into a notepad. Write down any interesting topics for further discussion in your next meeting. Next, try something new if you're feeling adventurous, but if you're not, there's no reason to try reinventing the wheel. One new thing I did in my meeting was to have participants take an online quiz I found. It was a flawed and imperfect quiz, but it made for good conversation. It was a catalyst for an interesting conversation about the expectations and reality of library work. Another idea is to try a half-caff coffee or no caffeine before the meeting, but whatever you choose, eat well. If you must have some sort of coffee-like sustenance, maybe consider trying some of the foods that Harvard Health lists as anti-anxiety foods, and the link is at the end when you receive the slides. These include magnesium-rich foods such as leafy greens like spinach, nuts and seeds, foods high in zinc like cashews and beef, and other veggies and high vitamin B content foods. The next one is prepare you. Look your best and dress for comfort. Something that makes you feel good. Maybe try a fun tie or different hairstyle, like I'm wearing my up bun today. Next is read 1 to 2 current articles or news items about your topic for some talking points as long as they're relevant to your audience. Run your topic and points by your meeting coordinator and get their feedback, or do a run through with a trusted colleague. And finally, try using the MOSHA strategy to facilitate. MOSHA from Southeastern has facilitated a few of the recent support staff interest groups, and I noticed that his strategy is to review the past meetings notes. And by the way, thank you to note takers for all you do. And go through point by point, follow up and see what's new in everyone's domain. If I leave you today with nothing else, leave with the knowledge that you are enough. The lasting benefits of facilitating a meeting will help alleviate some of that anxiety that you may feel beforehand. Thank you for your time, and feel free to connect with me if you have any thoughts, comments, or questions.
Thanks, Clarissa. That was great. And I do feel more calm. We still have a minute or two if anyone has questions for Clarisa. And I want to take a look at the anti-anxiety foods because I was definitely snacking on cookies here before we met. All right, again, we're all still here at the end, so feel free to drop questions in the chat. Clarisa, you were glitching just a little bit. I didn't hear if you said something just now. Oh, Zoom world and your technology. All right, well, Lara, why don't I turn it over to you because we're right here on time with our agenda. So.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Lara. I'm a public and research services librarian at Marist College. I should warn everyone, I decided to do this from home instead of in the library because this is my Zoom comfort place, is my home office. But I'm expecting a Chewy delivery today. So if it comes, and it will come during these 20 minutes, I guarantee it. So it will be well announced to the whole meeting. So I apologize in advance for that. But I do want to say that the reason I am here talking about meeting topics is so much of what was just said leading up to this really spoke to me about my experience with being a meeting convener. This was well before COVID, so we're going way back. I had just started as a community college librarian at the time, and I joined the high school to college transition SIG, and I went to a couple meetings, and it really spoke to me, and I feel like it really influenced my career path and what I wanted to do and how I thought about being a community college librarian and now a college librarian at a four-year school. So it was super influential and I just really enjoyed it. And after the first round, Carolyn was like, oh, hey, do you want to be a meeting convener? And for those of you that know me know that like talking is sort of my strong suit. As I say to my students, I'm really loud and I talk all the time, which is why I'm a librarian. But the idea of coming to, as a new librarian, coming to a meeting and having an idea and being the convener just really made me super nervous. And part of it was I felt like I had to come and have this super well-prepared topic that I knew all of this information about. And as I went through my series of meetings that I was leading, what I found was that I just needed to keep it a little more simple. So by the end, picking my meeting topic was one of my favorite things, whereas that first meeting, it was the thing that really scared me. So that's why I chose this as my topic today. Okay, so next slide. So this is the agenda of the things that we're going to talk about, or I'm going to be talking about right now. When we're looking at finding topic ideas for our SIG or our discussion group, we're going to pull our ideas from the everyday, the things that are happening around us every day at work and sometimes out of work as well. We're going to keep it simple and not overthink it. Overthinking is one of my strong points, like one of the things I do really well. So this one's hard for me. But when I had to pick out my topic, I wanted to go back and not just kind of overthink it, not let that panic part of my brain take off. We're going to do a little bit of research or homework. And we're going to make it fun. And I'm going to scale that fun accordingly. What my idea of fun is, I am told is not that fun, if you ask my children. But just adding something to mix it up a little bit, particularly like what Peyton spoke about back at the beginning. If you're having a tough conversation or a big topic, it's nice to kind of introduce something that might kind of break it up and just add a little bit of kind of restfulness in that meeting. Okay, next slide. So I want to talk about just pulling ideas from every day. So when I first started thinking about my topic, I was like, I have to go and do all the scholarly research and find out what the big topics are in libraries right now as we speak. And then I would try to fit them into like the meeting time frame or ideas. And I just sort of realized that these don't fit and this doesn't work. And I can't quite figure out why. And then I started realizing like these questions I had each day as I was doing my job really started to fit better into that meeting frame. Okay, first bullet here. So things that make you go, So why do my students, patrons, staff, software programs, library system software, why do they do a certain thing? Or how can I do this process, service, staff issue, library instruction, or outreach better? Any of those types of questions that you have, those are great meeting topics. Post-COVID, hey, how did everybody's chat function roll? Were people using it? Why or why not? That's a great question. And that could be a meeting topic. Maybe overdue notices. Does your library system send them? Does it work? Do your patrons like them? When do they like them? So all of these things that we do come up on a daily basis that we talk to our coworkers about, these are great things to think about as a meeting topic. Okay, next bullets. I like to call this, I'd like to phone a friend. So one of the things is as you're working, and there is always your colleague that you work with a lot or you trust, and you're like, I'm gonna ask them, how do they feel about this? Or what do they think? Or they're the person they bounce the idea off of. So getting to do a discussion group or a SIG is like pushing that out to folks you don't know, and in different libraries. There is a Twitter account that is fake library statistics, and they have a couple of funny tweets that talk about it's not a library staff meeting until someone says, but we have always done it this way. So one of the nice things about bringing these kind of general questions or things we wish worked better to a discussion group or a SIG is you can get the perspective from other libraries and other places, and then hear what works for them and what doesn't work for them and why. So any of these daily questions that you have as you work, they can make great meeting topics. Okay, next slide, please. So the next realm of pulling from the everyday is being social. And I use social in a general sense. We don't have to be super social, but the social things we do. I mentioned conversations with our coworkers, but email lists, meetings, and social media, these are all great places to pull meeting ideas. You could use library listservs, discussion boards, email newsletters. I actually pulled one of my topics for the high school to college transition group from an inside higher ed email newsletter about bad writing. And it was a columnist who was saying everyone complains about students writing poorly, but they really write the way that we've taught them. And this was something as a community college librarian, so often as I was helping students find articles, it would push out into writing. And I wondered, like, well, what do other colleges see? What do the high schools see? So this was a perfect topic for that group. And it didn't come from a library related thing. It came from an email newsletter, and it was outside of library land. So that's super exciting. So also look to news coverage, stories, press releases, publishers releases. Don't just limit it to library land. And of course, you can always go to the latest library Twitter kerfuffle, which is always fun for some kind of interesting ways to maybe take those arguments and make them into productive discussions. Recently, there was a lot of chatter about Banned Book Week and whether or not it's out of date or we should still be doing this. And I thought, oh, I thought we loved Banned Book Week. What's going on? And my first thought was like, oh, I wish we could have a SIG about this. I would love to hear my local colleagues' opinion on Banned Book Week and how they feel. And is this out of date or is it still pretty current? So just going out there, looking at our social work social stuff and non-work social stuff can really help find meeting topics. Okay. Next slide, please. Now that we're starting to think daily about all the things that we do and we think about and we read and are coming across our desk, and we're going to start to have these ideas of possible meeting topics, we need to put them on a list. And what I tell my students in library instruction is if you find an article and you might use it, but you're not really sure, email it to yourself or take the citation right away. It is so much easier to just delete it and say, I'm not going to use it than to try to remember what it was. So keep a list, however it is you like to keep lists. Is it a voice memo? Is it in the back of your planner? Is it on 100 Post-it notes in your office? However you like to keep that list, just start jotting them down. And think of these ideas as a brainstorming session. So you can add ideas, thoughts, extensions, fragments of ideas, follow-up questions. Jot them down in your like meeting ideas list. And always remember, just like brainstorming, there are no bad ideas on this list, but there are probably a few that just aren't going to work out and you're not going to use, and that's okay. And as you start to build this list, you can start to check in, look at the meeting wireframe. So my meetings with the high school to college transition group took place way before COVID. So we were all in person. So we had very detailed instructions and wireframes for our meetings because we could have events where we moved around. But always look at that agenda, think about if you're going to be on Zoom or in person. I had to change my Zoom or in-person strategy for this because I was thinking in person the whole time, and then I had to switch to my Zoom brain for a little bit and then see what might fit. And even after you find your first topic, keep writing down your ideas, because even once you have a topic, you might find one you like better, or you might be asked to lead a second meeting or something else, and you just never know. So just keep that list going because it's a good thing to have. Okay, next, please. So now that you have some ideas and you've picked one of your ideas and you've started fitting it into that framework, we need to keep it simple. This is where my worry brain really would ramp up, and I'd start like creating an annotated bibliography and start coming up with these like detailed things we were going to talk about. And I'm like, I don't think this is what I need to do. So first bullet, please. So don't overthink it. This isn't a 10-page research paper. It's a discussion topic. And going back to the idea of being social, think back to the things that if you were going to invite your library friends out for tea, not at work, what are the kinds of things that you are going to talk about when work would come up? What are the kinds of things that you're thinking, hey, this is what I see at my library, and I wonder what everybody else is doing or seeing. These are really nice ways to think about keeping it to that level of a, this is a social conversation versus this is a lecture series. Okay, next bullet. And this was also hard for me. For discussion groups, the point is not necessarily to come up with some, this is the answer to this pressing question, but to open this dialogue. Because for my group, we had college librarians and K through 12 librarians and youth services librarians. So we were all coming in from very different perspectives. So when we had something that would come up, and I at the time was at a very small library and other folks were at very large libraries. So we couldn't just always come up to like, this is the perfect solution for this topic. It was more like, hey, here's some ideas that we have, and we can pull from all of these ideas to see what works in my library setting. So we think about it just in terms of like that broad idea of like coming together to talk. Again, as I was mentioned earlier, you want to have some key points in case you need to get something back on topic. So if we start to venture too far off, we want to bring that back. So I always had an outline with some points, and for me, minute marks, because I always run over. And also if you wanted to kickstart something, if you had a quiet group, if it got a little smaller, that's when you would want to kind of pull in some other ideas. And I found that in some of the SIGs, a little meandering was like super helpful and often really interesting. I would learn so much about what other folks were doing just when we got not off topic, but just like on the edges of our topic. And sometimes those edges of the topic would make me think, hey, this would be a great thing for our next meeting. And I think maybe like one of the meetings that I was not the convener for, that was actually, something just kept coming up the whole meeting. And they were like, hey, we're just going to have the next meeting be about this topic because it's come up so often. So I wanted to have a nice solid topic, but not make it so restrictive because there was so much great stuff on the periphery. Okay, next slide. So this brings it to my second point of keeping it simple. And I always think about what I say to my students in library instruction. There's a sweet spot for specificity. If it's too broad, it's unwieldy. And if it's too narrow, it can be too restrictive. So does the topic need to be a bit more broad or a bit more specific? So as I'm taking all those ideas and I've picked my one idea, and now I'm going to like broadly outline this idea, does it work? Is it too broad? Is it so broad that we're just not even going to know where to start? Like if I come in and I'm like, hey, what about staffing issues? Well, that's huge. We could be all over the map if we just wanted to have a SIG about staffing issues. But if I wanted to say something like, let's talk about staffing on the weekend, well, that might be too narrow. And then I might lose folks that work in special libraries or school libraries that don't have a staffing issue on the weekend. But if I wanted to talk about maybe staffing equity, how do we staff our libraries fairly, both for patrons and for employees and for a diversity of employees, that kind of narrows that conversation down enough that I can frame out an outline for that meeting, but doesn't make it so restrictive that some folks are like, staffing equity, that has nothing to do with me. Because for the most part, we all have at least a few coworkers that we get to work with. Okay, next slide, please. So the last part of this, because now we've gone through, we've pulled from the everyday, we've gotten some ideas, we've gotten our topic kind of framed out nicely, not too specific, not too broad. We want to do a little homework or a little bit of research. Again, I immediately dive in and I'm like, I must do an annotated bibliography because that's what I do. So first bullet, please. So this might be for you as your meeting convener. It might be to share. So sometimes I would do a bunch of research and just kind of keep it in my head or make notes of it, which is what I've done here for my meeting outlines. Hey, talk about this article. Hey, mention this point. But sometimes you might want to share it. Sometimes it's just helpful to give out to people and say, if this is interesting to you, here's what I read in preparation. And that's going to depend on you, and it's going to depend on your participants, and it's going to depend on your topic. Okay. Next, please. What's also super important for doing research is you want to look for some different perspectives in the literature. So for me, I was looking at school libraries, academic libraries, but I also wanted to look at public libraries. All of these folks interface with people that are high school and also college students. You want to look at new information from new librarians, from seasoned veteran librarians, support staff as well as librarians, library users, teachers, social workers, anyone who might intersect with this same topic or a similar topic. You also want to look for the current ideas, what's currently happening, and a little bit of those previous trends. So when you want to talk about things that libraries used to do this, maybe they don't anymore. Why did they stop? And what's happening now? So do a little bit of a homework, just enough so you are there and have some of those points to draw those connections or to reroute your conversation back. Okay, next, please. And again, look outside of library land. This is helpful for finding topics that might be interesting to a range of participants. So for me, it was, I had these 3 different groups who were all coming together, and I wanted to make sure it appealed to all of them. And it can also help you examine any unconscious bias in your topic. We know what we know, and we see at work what we see. So when we want to make sure that we're having a meeting that has a broader appeal, you want to make sure that you're not limiting without even knowing that you're limiting. So by looking through all of the literature, but also outside of library, you can kind of get a better sense of that. I often go to a presentation I was doing for library instruction on research bias. So how to try to pay attention when you're searching. And I found a bunch of articles on it that I was going to reference. And this was for an English class. And one of them was from Business Insider. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to use that. We are doing an English class. That's from a business class. And I put it at the bottom of my stack of articles and I read all the other articles and I got to it and I'm like, I'm just going to read this anyway. And it was amazing. It was just such a fantastic article. It kind of hit all the points I wanted to hit with the students. And it was the best example because I almost didn't read it because I was like, well, I'm over here in an English class and this is a business class. So not only was it a great example about research bias, it was me, but it also then, that article drew in some of my students who were business majors, but taking an English class. So again, looking outside of library land can be super helpful. Okay, next slide, please. So my last slide, or my last point, is to add some fun. My idea of fun is probably not what everybody else's idea of fun is. Icebreakers, when people were talking about kind of like just getting super sweaty, like that's me when anyone announces icebreaker. I'm like, I can't do this. Like I have forgotten everything about myself and I've never read a book. Everyone's like, what's the last book you read? And I'm like, I've never read one. So you want to make sure that your fun is scalable and is going to be somewhat fun for some of the people. But one of the reasons I always like to add an activity, and again, this was pre-COVID, so we would get up and get out of our seats and move around. But some of us are listeners, some of us are joiners, some are both, some are neither. Some people do great in big groups, some people do good in small groups. So adding an activity gives an additional outlet for participation. Someone who might not have said anything in the big group might get super chatty and animated in that smaller group. So by adding something like any kind of activity or a video, you might pull in some folks who before were just seemed to be not as engaged, but they might have been, it just might not have been their platform. So this could be a video, this could be a game. I did one of my groups was on like noise in the library, and I was like, we could design our perfect library space. And I brought little cutouts of library furniture so we could design these little spaces that we thought would work well. It did not work as perfectly as I thought it would in my head, of course, but it was just a really nice way after sitting in kind of a warm, dark room to get up, to move around, and to meet some new people. So again, you can always just like try to toss something in. And in Zoom, this can be a bit more difficult. All right, let's click our link here. I added this one little tiny, it's actually a TikTok video, but from Twitter.
I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe I am. Am I the villain? I don't think I'm the villain.
So that's really short.
Is it me?
In a 20-minute presentation when I just want to break something up. That's Kelsey Bogan. She is my like hero high school librarian. I wish I could be her when I grow up, if I grow up. But she did a whole series of TikTok videos on ditching the Dewey Decimal System. And for me, this would be a fantastic high school to college transition group, because what happens if your high school library goes genrefied, and then all the students show up at a college and you're either introducing Library of Congress or Dewey Decimal, and they're like, what is this? And she does a lot of these sort of fun, very silly TikTok videos, but super heavy. And a lot of the issues surrounding Dewey can be sensitive issues. So if I was going to introduce hey, we're going to have a SIG about ditching Dewey, and how would that affect our students as they went from high school to college? I'd probably start with a couple of her just super excellent TikTok videos that are serious topics, but just a lot of fun. Okay, my last slide. So in summary, just to kind of go through what we've gone through already, you want to remember that finding a topic might seem daunting. To me, this was just terrifying. I felt like if it was a bad topic, nobody would come. I'd ruin the SIG for everyone. So this was super daunting. But I just found I was thinking about these topics that people relate to every day in different ways. So think about your daily work questions and communications and put them on your list. Look at your list, check in with the meeting requirements, find the right level of specificity, do some homework or some research, and maybe add an activity or some movement to break things up. It might be fun. It might not be. It might not be everybody's idea of fun. And some topics will work better than others. And your guess is as good as mine. The ones that I felt like, this is the best topic and I'm super prepared and I have everything, they went okay. And some of the ones that I was like, I don't know, maybe other people want to talk about those. Sometimes those went great. So, there's so many variables. Who's going to be there? How many people are going to be there? Is it Zoom? Is it live? Is it snowing? One time we had a blizzard rolling in, so we were all kind of like keeping an eye on the weather just to see if we could manage to drive home. So there's just so many variables, so you never know. So find the thing that speaks to you, and just keep going. Just keep rolling through your meeting, and then just keep getting ready for the next one, and just be proud of the work that you did at the end, because we kind of came together and shared ideas, and that was the goal. So that's everything I have there, folks.
Thank you. Thanks, Lara. Now I'm going to press that button as opposed to I got an itchy pointer finger. Thanks so much for that. And thank all the presenters. We still have a little bit of time for Q&A. And I want to mention one thing before we get rolling on that. So you can either use the chat feature for Q&A, or if you'd like us to call on you, you can go to the participants tab and click on raise hand, and we can call on you. And before we move over to that, I just wanted to first off, again, say thank you so much to our presenters. And I know that a lot of you here in the audience today are not from Southeastern. And much of what we went over is specific to SIGs at Southeastern. And what I wanted to make sure is that we extend a welcome to you. You are always welcome to participate in a Southeastern SIG. It doesn't matter if you're from the Hudson Valley or any other part of New York. You're welcome to those. And if you have, if you're a member of your local council and have a similar program at your council or would like to start one, we all work together at Empire State Library Network. So you can ask your local council for information about participating in their SIGs. But again, you're always welcome at ours too. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the share so we can actually all see each other for the first time in one big Zoom meeting. As we zoom out of here. Hi, everyone. Wow, there's so many of us. Yay. So happy that you're all here. If we have still 10 minutes on the clock for questions, and I'd love to stop talking and land this plane. So I'll let it sit for a second. And Moshe, if you wouldn't mind also, while we're waiting for questions to come in, can you drop the links to the evaluation and the CE certificate? Cool, thanks. All right, I see first question came in from Erin. Any tips for facilitating a hybrid meeting? That's a great question because we have not done them yet, but we are hoping to do them to get the best of both worlds. Peyton, Lara, or Clarissa, have either of you done a hybrid meeting yet?
I can't say, I'll jump in. I can't say officially I facilitated an adult meeting hybrid, but I've done it with students. And you just have to make sure that you acknowledge the people in the room and also acknowledge the people on the Zoom. So it's just kind of like more of a balancing act where you just have to make sure you keep in mind that there's people on the Zoom, but you still have to be animated enough for the people that are in front of you. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm just seeing in the chat too that I have a mistake on the CE certificate. I can go switch that. I copied and pasted from our last event. So
I would also add, it would really change some of the things that I might pick for a topic selection, particularly in terms of an activity, because it can be pretty hard, even just watching a video, like how do you want to roll that if you have some folks on Zoom and some folks in person? So there might be some kind of creative ways. More of the icebreaker type things that we did today would, I think, work better, where people could answer a question and folks could drop stuff into chat. So I think it would definitely change how I would kind of break up my meeting with kind of those activities.
Thanks. And all right, I think I just fixed the CE certificate, so let me know if that's working now. And to answer part of that question, something we always do here is practice. You know, we had a technical rehearsal for this yesterday, and part of a hybrid meeting is going to be solving the technology issue. So if you want to feel more confident about it, it might be worth it to have a little practice session before you do the real thing.
And I think it's always good to see if you can have someone else be there with you. You know, it's good to have two people in that situation. So one person can be on the computer and then you can be maybe standing more in front with everyone else.
Totally. Oh yeah, and I guess that gives me a good chance to say thank you to Moshe for running tech in the background here today.
I will also add just a word of caution about microphones for that. This is super important. So long before COVID, I worked at a community college and I was on a satellite campus. So I had been Zooming into meetings for basically my whole career. And one of the things that would happen is they'd pull everybody together and stick a microphone in the middle of the room. And I'd be like the lone Zoom participant. And I lost all of the discussion. So I would be listening, and the minute it went out to people in the audience, I'd be like, I got nothing. I never knew who was speaking. I couldn't hear them. So as a presenter, if you are set up that way, just make sure to then when someone says something, say it back if they can't hear that, or check in with them, make sure they can hear it, or remind people to announce who they are. Oh, hey, this is Lara, and I just wanted to add, because that person on Zoom might not necessarily know that. And for me, when we switched to everyone on Zoom, I was like, oh, this is so much better. So
Yeah, that's great. All right. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions. Yeah, having a microphone and a working camera is going to be a key element to hybrid events. I am looking forward to doing them. It's been nice to be able to have this many people come to meetings, and I'm super excited that you all have come from all over New York State to be here today. And that would not happen if we all had to fit into our conference room in Highland, New York. All right, I'm gonna sit in this awkward silence for just one more second. See if there's any other questions. And before we wrap up, we started this meeting asking, to your one word thought on meetings. And I wanted to wrap up with, if everyone could leave in the chat, if you're so inclined, one word that you're going to take away from this meeting, or an intention that you'd like to set going forward. And now I can actually see them, unlike the beginning. So we've got preparation, relax, neutrality, preparation, mantra for relaxing during presentation, fun, working on a mantra, no junk food. That's an ongoing struggle. Haha. Confidence, breathe, practice. And you got this. That's a good one to end on. All right, so again, I want to say thank you so much to Peyton, Clarissa, and Lara for leading this discussion on facilitating meetings. Moshe, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link to the evaluation and the CE certificate just one more time before we go. Going to go ahead and stop the recording and wish you all a very happy Wednesday, or whatever day you're watching this recording.